Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the RENNSPORT Founders League. To Season 3, the final race of the season, and the final race, well, at least under the name of the RENNSPORT Founders League. Today we will have a 2-hour race with GT3 cars around the Green Hell, and with the grid again being fairly stacked, I think we will have quite the exciting race to watch. But I'm not alone to bring you through this evening, of course, again, because I'm joined by my very beautiful and talented colleague, Tim Ireland.
You're trying to outdo yourselves with my intro every week now, aren't you?
Yes, that's the plan. Yeah,
Hi, Alina. Hello, everyone else.
I think it will be very interesting today. I mean, the last GT3 endurance races, to call them like that, were quite interesting, especially in terms of strategy. If you think back, the last one was the 10-lap race, so the 250 kilometers of Nordschleife.
Yes.
We had, I think, 3 or 4 completely different strategies to play part for the lead of the race. And the one before, of course, was the 2.4-hour Nordschleife race. Today we are kind of in the middle with the 2-hour race. What are your thoughts, Tim? What do you think we will see here today?
Well, we've still got the fixed setups, so everyone starts with the same amount of fuel, which takes them probably the first half an hour of the race. So I'm expecting people to maybe go for at least one tire stop, but they'll have to do a little fuel stop somewhere in between. But as we've seen with this field before, they quite often throw a bit of a spanner in the works or try and do a bit of a crazy joker strategy to get ahead. So you never can tell what's going to happen.
Absolutely agree with you on there. We are currently watching Dominik Ladler going around now into Arenberg, and his lap times are pretty good. But what you, of course, notice is he's driving a different car. He's usually driving the Porsche, and where he switched to the polar opposite of it.
The backwards Porsche.
Well, if you drive it in reverse, you would have one with the rear axle steering, but that's not that easy to drive, I can tell you that. The drivers have 2 laps here in qualifying. We're currently on the first one, so we'll probably see some safe lap times set instead of the fast ones. The Mercedes in front of Dominik Ladler here. That is Season 2 champion Adrian Lunio, who has struggled a bit so far this lap. He's one of 2 Mercedes, the other one being driven by Ali Zaya, who is making a return to the Nordschleife.
I'm sure we'll talk about it much more later on, but we have had a fairly substantial update recently with them, and there's been changes to the tyres amongst other things. So these guys are not quite in their comfort zone yet, shall we say.
Yeah, lots of them talked before the race are still getting used to the tires. They are mostly different in terms of how they brake going into the turn, as Lunio is completely understeering into the wall there. But yeah, what fundamentally changed is how the car handles under braking into turns, basically. And there are basically 2 sides of people comparing it to the state they were in before the update. They are the ones that now struggle with oversteer and the ones now struggling with understeer. And the key difference is you can't stress the tires as much as you want going into the turn. I mean, everybody, of course, knows the term trail braking at this level, I think. And you really have to make use of it, because if you have, let's say, full ABS, you turn into the corner while still braking at 100%, you are going to understeer, since the ABS is really just preventing your car to stop, basically. So what ABS does, it does release the brake pressure to keep the tire rolling, not locking up. So the drivers are still experimenting with how much ABS to run. I think some, like me, reverted back to a lower ABS setting. Some are still running the highest one. I think Lunio is driving a higher one. And we will see some big changes during the race time, I think.
Yeah. The main difference I was thinking is that you can't really judge them too much on their prior pace as much as if obviously the game had stayed the same. Things have changed. How much practice time people have had is obviously different from one person to another depending on their free time. So these guys may not know the car as well. Well, they won't know the car as well as they did before. So the order might be a bit more mixed up than you'd expect.
But who is back is Maximilian Dehn. And, well, it's nice to see him back. He's, of course, the winner of the first 24-hour race and the Season 1 champion. And a strong contender for this race as well. So it will be very interesting. But with so many changes and so many, well, differences in terms of how the cars actually behave, it will be interesting how fast he can adapt to it. But it seems like he's adapting quite well.
Yeah, I've been watching Dean as he's been going around doing his banker lap, and he's definitely not taking it easy. The car is definitely getting thrown around quite a lot.
Also got one of those nice stickers on the rear bumper.
Yeah.
I think it's the one where it says if you get too close, you're probably braking too late.
Yeah, if you can read this, you've missed your braking point, I think it is.
Yeah. Of course, included in the new battle pass. Alizaya walking the EWC level. Lots of EWC levels actually here today.
Yeah, we've got a good kind of mix of liveries, I think, which is always nice to see. Well, makes it easier for us to be able to tell people apart. And not really a dominance of one particular manufacturer either. They seem to have 2 or 3 of everything.
Yeah, indeed. I think it were 3 Audis, 2 BMWs, 2 Mercedes, and 4 or 5 Porsche. So you have a good mix of cars. And all of
the
them...
Aston Martin.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. But apart from that one, they are also having some hot irons in the mix because, well, we have Alizai and Lunio in the Mercedes. We have Dominic Dadler, the current leader in the championship in the BMW. There's still Dehn and Fridge in the Porsches. In the Audis, you have the likes of Thunder. So, yeah, there's, I think, everybody with a chance. Of course, one who has won a race in the most dramatic fashion, Enrico Breuninger, is also here. I think that was the most entertaining win we had so far, wasn't it?
I think it was, yeah. And some people finally getting times on the board here, and yeah, Maximilian Dehn not holding back with an 8:04 for his first lap.
Most times around the 8:20 mark, which is still quite good. I mean, you should not forget, even with those gaps of 11, 15 seconds, it is the Nordschleife.
It is, yes.
So
although from past experience, Maximilian Dehn is able to maintain his pace.
That is very much true.
I don't think you can count on him particularly sticking it into the wall. He does seem to be pretty au fait when it comes to the Nordschleife.
Maybe we should start topping because... and he's actually aborting the lap already. But well, he was too much on the curb there, exiting Widow.
He held it though, it was impressive.
Eric Heusler second at the moment. He had some very strong runs in the Founders League. So let's hope he can make it count here today.
I think most of the guys around here have had pretty decent showings in the Founders League so far, in one race or another. He says as Joachim Thunder comes onto the screen. Perpetual bridesmaid, Joachim Thunder.
I mean, he had a big relief, I think, last time in Monza.
Yes.
And he's currently pushing that Audi to third on the grid. The Mercedes were struggling in the first lap, but they still have one more lap to do. And I think they both won't let it slide.
Adrian Luneau seemed to be on a fairly decent lap, but then he just pulled over onto the side of the road, so I'm assuming there was something personal going on there, because he's carried on again. So he's either had some kind of electronic failure, or he had something in real life he had to deal with all of a sudden. Seems to be back and driving, but he does have a 5-second time penalty, apparently.
Getting a 5-second penalty in qualifying really requires quite a few incident points. Ach, and Thunder also parked it.
Yeah, we seem to have a good mix of default liveries, the Founders liveries, some EWC liveries. Nobody's unlocked any of the Battle Pass liveries yet, sadly.
Well, that would be quite fast, I mean. Can of course
I'm
unlock
looking
it
forward
manually.
to seeing them, okay?
Yeah, me too, but we still have to wait a bit, I think, for that. Timothy Fish still keeping it classy with the Founders Pack Diamond livery. You can actually still buy the Founders Pack, which supports us in a great way and unlocks this beautiful liveries for all your GT3 cars, or the 4 GT3 cars that were in the base game.
And the Nordschleife.
And the Nordschleife. And you still get car vouchers, so you can also choose 2 cars in the shop.
And you may be able to take part in a future series that isn't the RFL.
Indeed, we'll get to that a bit later today, but there are some changes coming to what then will be called the RENNSPORT Nordschleife League, and not the Founders League anymore. Big surprise! But yeah, I think it will be very interesting, and we also took into considerations a lot of feedback that we got from the racers. So let's hope it goes into the right direction. But more on that, as said later, as Timothy Fridge is going up the hill, a long uphill, pretty steep section actually here through Kesselchen.
Dennis Kurzer has been stationary for a very long time. I don't know if he's having some kind of hardware issues or maybe another real-life problem. We all have them sometimes.
I can't remember any issues with my sim racing equipment.
You've never.
Never.
You've definitely not had to resolder cables this week.
Actually cut out quite a good chunk of the cable because it was basically ripped open on so many spots that I resoldered all of the 5 cables. On board with Enrico Bräuniger, who are the highest place on the Nordschleife, and now it's all downhill.
I think that we've mentioned many times before that the diamond livery looks very good, but I think it looks especially good on the BMW.
I see what you mean, because it has like this two-faced theme to it, like the older Renault F1 cars, basically.
Yeah.
From the front it's all cyan, which I personally really like. From the back it's all white, basically, and from the side you see the color change. Since, of course, the car is quite boxy in that sense.
It is. But also the amount of black there is on the bonnet, I don't know, I like it. It works for me.
Not a single second of lifting here through Bell of S. There's a challenge from Maximilian Dehn, if I see that correctly. Say yes and I will let everyone by the start and race from last place. First up, who will actually be on the front row? Because Eric Häusler is about to finish his lap. Alizaya right behind.
Häusler seems to be on a pretty good lap from what I can tell.
It is an improvement. Alizaya goes to 4th. Pushing Lala down to 5th. Next across the line is Timothy Fritsch. He comes home in 5th now. What can Enrico Brueniger do? And puts it into 3rd. First few sectors didn't look quite like it, but he must have had some very great sectors on the Nordschleife to put that BMW in 3rd.
Yeah, he's only just beating Joachim Thunder to the 3rd place there, but it was a fairly impressive lap.
Julian Checot remains in 8th. Oh, and launches the car up in quite the dramatic fashion. But the last to cross the line will be Adrian Lunio. Right, I think Dennis Kotzer won't be able to set a lap time here since he's still stuck in the area of Wippermann. Actually, couldn't quite make it in time. There is a time limit to the session. And this is the wrong one. This is also the wrong one. This is the correct one. So while we now wait for the cars to get ready on the grid, hoping everybody can make it. This is basically how Season 3 progressed. We started on the 22nd of November, so pretty much exactly a month ago, with the front-wheel drive series, which was quite an interesting race. We had, you could say, only 3 competitive cars, but all on different strategies. And it was very dramatic in the end with the tire drop-offs. Then you have had the GT4 series, which was a bit more like the BMW M Cup, but had some very close and good racing nonetheless. And today we will have 2 hours of GT3 action, the highest or the fastest cars you will be able to see on the Nordschleife. We have 2 Porsches on the front row, Maximilian Dehn and Eric Häusler, followed by Joachim Thunder and Enrico Brueniger on row 2. And our championship leader, Dominik Ladler, all the way down in P7.
Yeah, Ladler's got some work to do today, but we'll see. We'll see how his consistency plays out during the race.
There we go. Everybody gets rolling. It's 100 kph till the lights go green. And we go racing. The 2 hours of the Nordschleife have officially started. And it seems to be a very good start for Enrico Brueniger, Maximilian Dehn. Of course, letting everybody by, but Enrico Brueniger already alongside Eric Häusler. I think that's Julian Checot with also a very good start. Timothy Fritsch currently in 4th, around the outside of all the EWC liveried cars. And Joachim
Yeah,
Thun-
Breuninger seemed to thread the needle a bit there. He took some pretty aggressive lines into the first few corners, but he's come out second again.
Alizar with a good move down the inside of Chico. But so far so good. Everything went clean and safe. It's always a good thing. And Maximilian Dehn powering his way through the train of cars. Other way around.
Probably wanting to get past as many as he can on the GP section of the track. So once he gets onto the Nordschleife, it's going to become quite a bit more difficult.
I'm surprised by the amount of grip he had on the rear axle there. Coming onto the straightaway. Passing Timothy Fridge.
Yeah, really balancing on the throttle with the rear engine Porsche. He seems to have adapted pretty quickly.
Chico with a very interesting idea there into Sabine Schmidt's curve. But that's not really a place where you can do an overtake.
Yeah, he wants to be past Joachim Thunder right now. He's flashing his lights.
And I think he pressured him into a mistake because Joachim Thunder onto the curbing. Basically straining out the car too much. Similar to what happened to one of the BMWs, I think 2 years back in qualifying, in top qualifying.
Our pole sitter Maximilian Dehn already up to 4th place in this field, which is pretty impressive.
But look up front, Eric Häusler and Enrico Breuninger. They are sure building a gap, but now Chico having to run side by side with Maximilian Dehn into Schwedenkreuz. Oh, and Alizaya is off. And big off in Schwedenkreuz. While trying to pass Joachim Thunder.
He should get some kind of achievement for the most spins there. Oh, valiantly getting out of the way. Thank you, Alizaya.
Prime example. The lead at the top, about 1.2 seconds.
Yeah, but up into 3rd already. Here comes that man, Maximilian Dehn, putting some pressure on Enrico Breuninger.
Oh, a little bit of touch there. But great move around the outside at Kallenhardt. You don't see that often.
No, that was an impressive move, and he'd set that up a couple of corners earlier. Breuninger was trying to go for some defensive lines, and just not able to hold Dehn off, I'm afraid.
Adler getting under pressure from Adrian Lunio, who moved up into 7th. Oh, but launching down the inside at Wehrseiten. Well, probably not quite planned. But with the touch between Thunder and Alizaya, of course, Thunder was also very lucky to not get his car loose there. He kept as much to the inside as possible, so no fault to his own, but the Audi is very unstable in this kind of situations.
Yeah, it's very sensitive to changes in weight, so little taps like that can definitely throw it around.
I mean, the reasoning behind that is quite simple to understand, isn't it? I mean, if you have this touch on a Porsche, you have the weight all the way in the back of the car. Or the main portion of that weight. So your pivot point is so far rear that it doesn't really influence you. And in a BMW and a Mercedes, you might feel it a bit more, but you have way more opportunities to correct it, because the car pivots around the front end of the car where you have the steering. Now in the Audi, a mid-engine car, you don't have that. You basically just pivot around the middle of the car, so if you overcorrect you will fly off, if you don't correct you will fly off. That's the trade-off you get for a lot of speed, while Maximilian Dehn passes Eric Häusler for the lead of the race.
Julian Sicko seems to be stuck on the curving here. He's slowly trying to get himself off. All the other drivers getting shown a yellow flag. But I think he is beached.
That's not the situation you really want.
No. I can see his back tyres going hell for leather, but the fronts don't seem to be doing a lot.
I mean, with the semi-open diff, you might think, okay, the car could theoretically push itself out of there, but not really. Since that little bit of contact that you might have in that situation isn't necessarily gonna help you.
I'm watching him, and it's pretty painful. I just wish I could go out there and give him a push.
Let's just hope he can resume the race. But the two Mercedes are getting at each other.
We all knew it would happen eventually, but I don't think any of us were expecting it to happen this quickly. Maximilian Dehn at the front of the race with a 3-second lead.
I mean, that's impressive. It's not like this is on easy mode. Yes, a very strict grid to beat, but on the Nordschleife, at least, we know that he is on esports level. Alizar getting very loose there, and I think Chico's driving again, isn't he? Yeah, he is.
Chico is moving again. He's lost, funnily enough, quite a lot of time, but he is moving and he's carrying on driving.
That's very good to see. And all hope is not lost, I'd say. I mean, 2 hours on the clock. Of course, catching up to the leaders will be, I would never say impossible, but very, very, very unlikely and hard. But you can always benefit of others people's mistakes, pit stop blunders.
I dread to think what state his tyres are in after all that wheel spin, though.
I mean, they didn't really have contact with the ground, did they?
No, not so much.
Oh, and Maximilian Dehn is pitting in the first lap. And we can actually see the all-new pit crew in action here while he's refueling.
See, refueling, no tyres.
So he's going in for the early stop. I suspect, as you said earlier, we will see 2 stops.
I wouldn't have expected him to stop this early, though. He has absolutely brimmed it. He has put every litre of fuel he can in that car.
I wonder if he wants to pretty much halve the race distance per tire. Exactly.
I don't know, to be honest.
I think we will have 15 laps if I didn't miscalculate.
That sounds about right, yeah.
Meanwhile, Adrian Lunio has lost Alizar, yeah. Well, the other way around. But Timothy Rich has catched up to him.
Yeah, there must have been something a little bit contacty going on there, because there's now 5 seconds between them, or somebody lost it.
Achim Thunder and Dominic Lala up into 3rd and 4th. Since we have kind of the unique situation of this being the first race with the newer tires and all that changed with it, basically. I think the end result isn't necessarily determined by who we see up front right now, who's Eric Häusler, but who will be able to improve the most over the duration of the race. Right now it looks like Adrian Lunio overall is gaining in terms of lap time, so he is closing up the gap that he had in qualifying. If he can surpass the pace later in this race, I wouldn't be surprised to see him up front. But it could also go the other way for any of the other drivers and himself, of course, as well.
Yeah, I can't imagine any of these guys have had a chance to sit down and drive the Nordschleife for 2 hours yet, so they're bound to be improving lap after lap at the minute, and there could be some shuffling going on later on as people find the rhythm and catch up or slow down compared to other people around them. Julian Sicko getting the tyre swap there.
We'll see more of the pit crew later on today. And also tomorrow, because tomorrow we have another bigger race. 90 minutes of Fuji. It was voted by the community in the advent calendar polls we did. And it will be Hypercars and GT3. Both of which you can drive for free. Of course, you will usually have a free GT3 in your garage if you signed up before early access. But currently in the free rotation, you will have an Audi R8 GT4, a BMW M Hybrid Hypercar, and a Porsche 911 GT3. So you can take part tomorrow, no matter if you own the content or not.
The BMW hypercar being, I think, general consensus is that it's the slightly tamer of the two, perhaps a bit easier to drive. So a good choice for your first, if you fancy your first try into the hypercar field.
Of course, if you want to look fancy, there's in the Battle Pass a livery for the Porsche 963 that you can unlock.
There is, that's true.
But I think this might be a very interesting race to watch. Fuji, we didn't really have major races on yet, unless you count the RCLs in. But apart from that, a 90-minute race is a new distance on that track. Hypercars GT3, it is a very wide track, but also very technical.
Yeah, there's some really long sweeping corners where I'll expect the hypercars to be able to do some pretty speedy overtaking moves, but you've got to be aware of the GT3 lines through there because they cannot hold the same line that the hypercars can.
Meanwhile, Adrian Lunio was able to build a bit of a gap to Timothy Fridge, free himself from the might of the Porsche. You could call it.
Eric Häusler throwing down a fair few purple sectors right now, so he seems to be getting to grips with the car and really picking up his pace.
Meanwhile, Maximilian Dehn is closing in on the back of the train, basically, after his pit stop.
Julian Sicko had a similar strategy to Maximilian Dehn. Maybe saw him pull into the pits and thought, oh, that seems like a good idea. But he did take tyres as well. But again, he has completely brimmed it in the tank. It's full as full can be.
From what I felt with the new update and new tires, brimming the car full is actually much more of a relevant factor now. The car is, well, let's say, more reactive to higher fuel loads, and you can gain more time by having less in the tank. But it's kind of the payoff, of course, because Maximilian Dehn will save that time in the second pit stop, not having to refuel the load he already put in. And for him in his situation, he wouldn't really gain much with having less fuel in the tank, because he would still have to get past all these cars if he wants to pass them before the pit stops. And Timothy Fritsch has found his way past Adrian Lunio, struggling a lot again during this stint of the race.
That was a very expensive lawnmower there for a minute.
Well, there was a certain F1 driver who said Mercedes did great lawnmowers, so... Oh, and Lunio again sideways a lot, but Maximilian also had a sideways moment at exiting the small carousel.
Ooh.
And Lunio lost it.
Yeah, very much so. He was looking pretty sketchy through that series of corners there. Eric Heusler just coming to finish the first flight. Well, he was going to come to finish the first flying lap of the race. He's gone into the pits.
And so is Enrico Bräuniger. And so will be Joachim Thunder. So no fourth lap for our drivers. Let's go on board with Dominic Lala for this pit stop. So you can see the pit crews ready on the side.
None of the tyre men running out, so they're all just going for the fuel stop right now.
Which of
Everybody
course,
piling into the pit lane.
fuel being added to Timothy Fritsch car. It's Alizar and Dominic Lala gone. Let's go on board for when the Lollipop Man lets him go.
Just, and go.
I really like that detail. I've been looking forward to it since we had it in production, basically.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to seeing the pit crews. It's a bit less guessing for us for who's taken tyres and who hasn't. Being able to see the team running around and changing the tyres or not is really helps us in the broadcasting box.
And of course it looks good. There's no denying that.
It does look good. Yeah, they've done a great job with the pit crews. All dressed in white. It does look a bit like a lot of stormtroopers.
Well, at some point maybe you'll be able to customize. Who knows? But for now, Alizaya has come close to Dominic Lala, but has been struggling with the car out of the pits. So
Ali Zahir has a drive-through penalty, I'm afraid.
So that will put him down quite a lot. But I gotta say, I was expecting the gap between Dean and Heusler to be a bit bigger.
Yeah, it's closer than I thought it was going to be, to be honest. I'll agree with you there. Ali Zahir drive-through penalty for speeding in the pit lane.
That's always a knock on the confidence so early in the race for me. Not gonna lie, because if you know, okay, I will have to come in twice more, because I will have to sit out the drive-through penalty, and I will have to do another stop, because I won't make it on fuel anyways. Yeah, it kind of brings you down quite a lot. But it's
Ali Zahir has taken on significantly less fuel than everyone else. He seems to be on a bit of an interesting strategy. Sorry to cut you off there.
Oh, good. Yeah, it will of course be interesting if this now does... Well, it definitely won't help him, that's for certain, but how much it does harm him. Because if he sits the drive-through penalty, he will come out in between Fridge and Lunio, and it depends on how long he can run freely, because right now he's behind Dominic Ladler, and it feels like he can go a bit quicker, theoretically, since Dominic Ladler probably has fueled up to the top.
Adrian Lunio just had a bit of a moment there going through the GP section of the track. Yeah, the little yellow indicator coming on the mini sector on the track map, which is a great new feature we've had recently. But yeah, he seems to have lost about 30 seconds. I think he had a bit of a spinning situation.
That is very likely.
I think Ali Zahir here demonstrating the what you were saying about fuel load. He seems to be really up behind Dominic Ladler now with his lighter fuel load. It's a bit of a pity about his drive-through penalty to be served. It'd be interesting to see how that strategy paid out for him in the long run.
I mean, the drive-through penalty, it is of course not a great thing to have, but I also don't think it's the worst here on the Nordschleife. The pit lane is quite short. Of course, you go by quite quickly, but not as quick as, for example, Jeddah, where this would be a death sentence. It will probably lose you about 15 to 20 seconds, but you can make that up during 2 hours of Nordschleife. I mean, we've seen differences in lap times being about 2 to 4 seconds from P2 to P7. So there's still a lot to play for, and I mean, with the improvements we've seen from the different drivers, Alizar seems to be in a good position.
Yeah. Fair play. Only a few people have completed a valid lap of Nordschleife right now, but all their lap times are very, very close together. Enrico Breidinger has done a 26.1, Joachim Thunder has done a 26.4, Dominic Ladler 26.2, and Ali Zahir do a 26.1. So they're all they're a bit spaced out on the track, except for Ali Zahir and Dominic Ladler, but they're all running very, very similar lap times.
Meanwhile, we've seen Enrico Breidinger kind of jumping into the fence there, into the catch fence, which you don't necessarily want to do. Might give us a bit of an introduction for what's to come next, because right now he didn't take any damage. Car's good as new. But from the first season of the RENNSPORT Nordschleife League on, or RNL for short, this won't be the case anymore, won't it?
No, we're going to finally put our money where our mouth is, after talking about damage being off in the RFL races, and yeah, for the Nordschleife League, it will be damage on.
Yeah, I mean, the Nordschleife, I think one of the most daring tracks in that sense is, you know, there are different kinds of difficulty in terms of racetracks. I actually wouldn't say the Nordschleife is the hardest to drive in itself. I absolutely love to drive it, and for many reasons it's for me one of the greatest tracks in the world, but if you compare to a track like Bathurst, for example, or some very high-speed street circuits, it actually isn't too difficult because you always have a good flow in it. But once you do a slight mistake or catch a bump, which on the Nordschleife there are many bumps of, it can send you off quite hardly. So the payoff for a mistake is usually quite big in terms of the damage you may receive. Of course, the guardrails are quite close to the track, so if you fly off, it will counter a lot of your momentum by just not letting you hit it straight on, but more sideways, basically. But the the damage that you receive on your suspension especially will hurt you and definitely be worse than on tracks like Spa, for example.
Yeah, it's, as they like to talk about when they're commentating real life events, it's a very kind of old school track, and then it has a small grass runoff before the walls. A lot less than a kind of modern Formula One track. So although there is a bit of space, unlike, like you were saying, Bathurst, which is just track wall, it's not a lot. It's not a lot of room to make mistakes.
And of course, if you do a mistake, it will cost you more than just the pit stop. And also depending on where you do that mistake, if you do it in Hohenrhein, it might not be as bad as doing it in, well, let's just say Sabine Schmidt's Kurve. Because you will have a whole 20 kilometers of track before you get to the pits.
Yeah, driving an entire lap of the Nordschleife with your steering being right hand down can cost you a lot of time.
And nerves. But that's also...
During that lap, Timothy Fritsch seems to have hit the first threshold in the incident point and has been given a 5-second time penalty.
Yeah, that works, of course, with the penalty steps that have been added with the last, well, revisit to the penalty system, which will be optimized, let's say, fairly soon as well. But you basically have 15 incident point steps, so 15, 30, 45, 60. At 65, there is a DQ limit. I'm not sure. I don't think I don't think we will see that today. So I'm not worried about that. But of course, with each 15 incident points, you will get a time penalty, which adds up over time. So,
yeah, we've increased the limit quite a bit for this, with it being a 2-hour race, obviously, compared to the usual shorter races we have on the public servers. The general kind of scheduled races. This is also on a public server. But yeah, it's there, but it's not as perhaps prevalent as in the shorter races.
currently on board with Enrico Boaniga. I mean, he really surprised me. You know, he was before the race, yeah, I mean, I'm not that good in that way, and I mean, he's third. So he's basically pulling the Etienne and Lucas on us.
He is a bit, yeah.
But we are nearly at 1/4 race distance.
Yeah, everybody taking at least one pit stop. Most of the guys opting to take as much fuel as they can fit on board. Ali's out here being the odd one out in that situation and going for significantly less. But he's probably still got another 3, maybe 4 laps in before he pits again. But he does have his drive-through penalty to serve still.
Meanwhile, we are getting close to 1/4 of the race distance completed. We have started the race at 10 AM in-game. And this race will run for 2 hours with a 6 time multiplier. So we will run into the later evening hours. So we would expect about 10 PM in-game time. So it will get a bit darker.
Yeah, it's currently 1 PM in-game. So it's gone 3 hours in the last half hour real time.
I know some specialists or I knew some specialists back then who basically used shadows as braking markers. And if there at any point was a good explanation why you shouldn't do that, this is it. Because if you take a look at where the shadows are and where the sun is basically, where those shadows are moving lap by lap on a track like this, where 8 minutes a lap. And
I have fallen foul of the shadows as a braking marker before.
I am deeply disappointed. But I will look over that fact. I mean, the Nordschleife for me is kind of weird but cool in the sense that I don't really need brake markers in the sense of like classic brake markers. I don't need a 100 sign or a line at the ground or something. Because at so many turns you just know when to brake, you know? It's not like you really need to say, okay, this is my braking marker, I brake there. You just say like, okay, this is the turn, I will brake there. It's so casual in a way to drive, but super hard on the other hand.
We use it quite a lot in a peek behind the curtains fashion. We use it quite a lot during internal testing because it's a lot less about memorizing things like braking markers as you drive around the Nordschleife, and so much more based on the feeling you get from the car. And that can really help you try to decide if you are getting enough feeling from the car or if you need to get a bit more. Whereas some of the other tracks, it's very easy to become obsessed with just hitting the same braking markers you always have done, and does it still work?
What I experienced the first time this week actually is a light or a light source basically preventing me to see my braking marker. I mean, you were with me there in voice chat, I think.
I was, yeah.
So just to keep it short, I was basically driving Hockenheim at night for pretty much the first time, because in every other simulation I drove before, there was no Hockenheim at night. Either there was no Hockenheim or there was no night. And of course we have that in RENNSPORT. So I did I think it was the M2 race there. And when you come down Parabolica into the hairpin, most people, just like me, would use the left-hand curb to brake for the hairpin. But just in front of that is like those small light beam trailers, you know, like those floodlight trailers, who's shining light directly in front of the curb, and you can't see the curb because of that.
Adrian Luneau here is the second driver to pick up a 5-second penalty for exceeding the incident point limit. So both him and Timothy Fritsch have 5 seconds to be served right now.
They can serve it in the pit stop, but they also can just have it as added race time.
Yeah. Assuming they configure it properly before they pit. Which they've got the entire Dottinger Hour, so they've got plenty of time to sort that kind of thing out.
That is probably the best thing about the Nordschleife, I'm not gonna lie, for sim racing. Of course, in real life they also communicate with their engineers while driving down the Dottinger, but in terms of pit stop preparation, the Dottinger Höhe is pretty much perfect. You have more than enough time to decide on strategies and actually set them up in the pit stop menu.
Yeah, it's true. It's a very handy thing to be there for us sim racers. Thank you, 1920s Germany, for putting that feature in for us.
Well thought out for the future. I mean, the origin of the Nordschleife, if we're already talking about that, is, at least in my opinion, Here comes the 50-minute podcast with Lino again. But it is very interesting in my opinion because it didn't quite result out of streets, like for example Spa. It wasn't completely purpose-built like Monza. Of course it's a purpose-built racetrack, but it kind of was just created to create jobs, to have people paid in the region of, well, the Nürburgring.
If I could step in for a second, Ali Zahir has ignored his drive-through penalty and has been disqualified.
Alright, now that you say it, I see it. Wonder if you didn't notice, or...
Maybe.
But we'll probably get to know that later on. I'm sure we'll see him in one of the chats at least. But coming back to the podcast. The origin of the Nordschleife is very different, and you see that in there. There's no track just like the Nordschleife. Closest is probably Bathurst, which actually kind of resulted out of the same thing. Because Bathurst was planned as a racetrack, disguised as a scenery road, while it's still a public road to this day. You can't drive on that during non-race weekends. So technically Bathurst is a street circuit. And most other tracks of the time were either road circuits, as said, Spa is probably the most prominent example, or Le Mans. Or on, well, the other hand, the purpose-built ones. Monza, Daytona comes to mind, even though that was a bit later. Indianapolis, so it's super unique in its way to be built.
Yeah, it was built at a very early point in motor racing, and it was definitely still kind of to this day very unique in what it is, as well as how long it is.
I mean, I think back then it wasn't actually that long compared to... I think there was some other tracks that were like 26 to 30 kilometers long. Usually like on public streets. But the thing is, the Nordschleife has... Of course it has changed, but I mean, it's still fairly close to what it was that many years ago. Compared to other tracks, if you look at Spa, it's nothing like the Spa from the 1960s, 40s. So
no, that is true.
That one has transformed into a purpose-built racetrack, but the Nordschleife never quite has. Of course, you had the Grand Prix circuit being built instead of the Südschleife, but the Nordschleife always stayed in this magical area of being a racetrack that wasn't quite a purpose-built racetrack, but yet was a purpose-built racetrack.
I suppose being British, I have to draw the obvious comparison with the Isle of Man circuit, which
I thought you would
is
come up
mostly
with one of the
mostly
Apple tracks.
public roads. No.
Is there any part of Isle of Man that isn't public road?
Yeah, there is a small section of it that is a private road. So you can't drive that the rest of the time. You can only do that on the Isle of Man weekends. But yeah, most of it is public road. I think it's like 99% of it, basically. But also, some of it has no speed limit, which makes it an odd one.
Well, the Nordschleife had speed limits for a few years.
Yeah?
Yeah, it actually had. I mean, I think either you have watched the Gran Turismo movie or have watched VLN for a couple of years. but you probably remember the Nissan GTR GT3 backflip on Flugplatz.
Yeah.
And after that one, they actually implemented speed limits on a few sections on the track. I think it was something like 240 kph through Flugplatz. So like from exit Hatzenbach to Schwedenkreuz or something, you were only allowed 240, and some other areas as well on the Nordschleife. Until they made changes, they flattened out the hill in that part. I mean, it's still scary, but it used to be even scarier. So they changed then, and after that they removed the speed limits again, but up to that point. And actually, if you do Touristenfahrten on the Nordschleife, there are still two spots where there are speed limits. One is Breitscheid, because there's like the public road right beneath, and I think it also has to do with noise or something. And the other one, except for of course entry and exit, what was the other one? I'm not quite sure right now, but there was a second one, I think. Or used to be, at least. So speed limits in racing are nothing new. Of course, there's also the prohibited overtaking at Macau.
Yeah.
In the hairpin area, which is, I mean, a racetrack where you are not allowed to overtake in a certain sport is... it makes sense in that situation, but if you just tell that to somebody who's not as connected with motorsports in itself, he's probably gonna look at you with a pretty weird face.
Yeah. Well, no, obviously with the German heritage and autobahns, I suppose roads not having speed limits is a bit more commonplace. But for us in the UK, the fact that one of the roads of the Isle of Man has no speed limit is a very not common, very unusual situation, and it can be popular with a certain crowd of car owners, shall we say.
I mean, I can only say from my own experience, of course, as a German in Germany. Actually, the streets with no speed limit tend to be a bit safer than the ones with like 120 or 130 kph, because the thing is, if everybody knows everybody can go at every speed, no issue, because everybody knows it. If everybody is driving like, okay, here's 130, but then there are a few people who's coming by at 160, 180 something, because they just ignore the speed limit, then it gets kind of dangerous. In areas where you can also drive those speeds, so there are some parts of the Autobahn which are totally fine, where it's 130. That's usually the bigger danger spots in that sense. But if you want really good stretches of road with no speed limit and not much traffic, can only suggest the northern part of Germany. In the southern part you won't really find those roads. But towards the northern coast or Netherlands, you have some really nice roads. And if you ever go to the Nordschleife, remember to behave, because if you do burnouts or stuff out of the gas station that is there, well, it's not cool. People just find you cringe.
And repair bills are very expensive.
Well, those people don't care, I guess.
No, that's true.
But most of them drive cars that know that can smoke your, I don't know, VW GTI. Is the gamepad allowed in the Founders League? Of course it is. You basically just have to be able to control your car and you're free to enter. And I mean, we have, I think, quite good gamepad support at this stage, so shouldn't be a big issue.
Yeah, it's another thing that we've been improving on with each build. I think it's been getting better and better as we've found out about quirks in getting gamepads working and then fixing them. So it is something that we're working on, and it's constantly improving. But yeah, I mean, we can't stop you entering with whatever control scheme you want. But as long as you can drive okay, you will be allowed in. Jay, you're not supposed to be in chat typing answers. You're supposed to be going on holiday.
Do your job, Jay. Go on holiday. We have completed the usual RCL distance. There's still one more distance and 2/3 to go.
Yeah, there wasn't a lot of difference between when people entered the pits, but there's still a fairly large variation in the amount of fuel people have got on track right now. Probably not really surprising to most people, but because Maximilian Dean came in first, he is currently running a little bit lower than everyone else.
He also seems to be running a bit faster than everyone else, so...
It does seem to be running a bit faster than everyone else. To be fair, his best lap is 6 seconds ahead of Hausler in second right now. He has come back to the green hell just to stamp his authority on it one last time before the RFL finishes, I think.
That could well be, but Eric Häusler so far is driving a beautiful race as well. Not a single mistake I really noticed. And took the lead in the first lap and stayed there until Maximilian Dehn showed up, but he didn't really lose too much time as well. I mean, 27 seconds to Maximilian Dehn after 47 minutes of running. That is not too bad.
He's running a little bit slower than Enrico Breininger in third right now, but just on his best lap time. But as we've said a bunch of times with the Nordschleife, it's only 0.4 seconds, which is basically nothing over 25 kilometers. The gap between second and third currently 20 seconds, so the difference in lap speed has to be quite dramatic to be making up that kind of distance.
I mean, if you want to compare to a different track, I think it was about 6 seconds a lap on average he's lost to Maximilian Dehn. Those would compare to just 1 second on Spa at maximum.
Yeah.
And I mean, then everybody would go only 1 second between the two of them, but it's actually super close here on the Nordschleife. Not to mention that the Nordschleife, I'd say, is more challenging than Spa in terms of lap time.
Dean's last lap was his fastest lap as well, so his car's obviously still performing pretty well.
Of course, with the lower fuel load, it's getting quicker over time.
His tyres are nearly an hour old, but yeah, with the lower fuel, he seems to be still be able to maintain control of that, which is always a good sign for us from a simulation point of view.
Not much change from the train Bräuniger Thunder Ladler, but Timothy Fritsch is getting close to Ladler.
Yeah, Timothy Bridge does seem to have been catching up quite a bit in like kind of lap after lap as the race has gone on. He's still got that 5-second penalty to serve right now. So he's perhaps not realistically as close as it looks on track at the minute. But definitely making a race of it between those two.
Track position is very fundamental on the Nordschleife though, so if he can get past, or he has to get past Dominik Ladler quickly if he wants to have a chance. But, I mean, you've heard it in Formula 1 quite often, I think, with having a 5-second penalty, but it was worth not serving it or giving back the position instead of the penalty stuff because track position is worth so much and so on. On the Nordschleife, this is pretty much the case. Of course, you don't want to really have this penalty hanging over your head at the end of the race, so if you can serve it, you want to, definitely. But in his situation right now, where he still has the pit stop where he has to serve it or can serve it, ahead of him, he needs to get past Dominik Ladler before the Nordschleife to really get a shot at building a gap. But right now, Dominik Ladler was building a bit of gap to Timothy Fritsch once more.
Yeah, the gap has kind of concertinaed a little bit at different times of the circuit, depending on their driving style and the specific sequence of corners they're at. But Timothy Fritsch does seem to be slightly quicker, I think, on average. The fuel load is basically the same. So as far as pit stop strategy goes, they'll probably be fairly similar.
I wonder if we will see Maximilian Dehn in the pits next lap.
What do you think for splitting it 50-50 as far as tyres are concerned?
I mean, in his situation, coming in the very first lap to top up fuel, I think it would make sense. It would give you the most balanced race. On the other hand, the low fuel tank is worth the payoff, I think.
Yeah,
So,
he's just set another fastest lap of the race with his last lap round, where he did an 8:09, which is 3 seconds quicker than his previous lap. So he's obviously liking the feel of the car at the minute. He has still got a couple of laps worth of fuel in his tank, so he could stay out for a little bit longer. But yeah, I wonder if he's willing to push the tyres.
I wonder if we will see a no tire change. I would suspect if we see it from Thunder or Ladler.
Yeah.
But I'm not quite sure on the longevity of the tires. 2 hours is quite the ask, but we are on Timothy Fritsch on the grass. They're losing the car. But we do know that you can indeed double stint the tires, but is it worth the payoff in terms of pace? Of course, with low fuel, it's not the big issue, but you have to refuel to quite a substantial amount.
Yeah, having a heavier fuel load on the slightly worn tyres will be definitely challenging, and it'll put more of a load onto the tyres for the next few laps for sure. I was wondering before the race whether we'd have anybody attempting a no swap, but I wasn't sure. The tyres are still a bit of an unknown factor to most of the field. Like I said right at the beginning, I don't suppose people will have done any kind of 2-hour stints yet, so they could well be kind of playing it by ear as far as tyre wear goes. There are tyre wear indicators in the hood, so they can see how worn their tyres out and try and feel it out and see whether they can last a bit longer. Maximilian Dean getting a little bit squirrely now, so I think his tyres are starting to possibly reach their limits, or he's pushing far too hard.
He's been pushing especially the rear tires quite a lot throughout the race. He's always slid the back out as much as possible without getting sideways for the extra rotation. That was very noticeable to say like that. But maybe they are trying to give in now.
It's definitely not Maximilian Dean's valid lap right now. He has had a few off-track moments. His ideal lap time, according to the HUD, is currently at 8:07, which would be pretty impressive if he could hit that during the race. Dominic Ladler continuing to hold off Timothy French, though. It's not able to quite close up enough to start thinking about making a move. Still hovering around the 2.5 mark. If you can just get a little bit closer towards the end of the lap, then you can get that big aero drag all the way down Dottinger. It would definitely be useful for him.
Slips out of the carousel though.
I'm sorry, Timothy French. I talked about you, but you immediately made a blunder.
The commentator's curse, it's back. Maximilian Dehn entering Tiergarten. Will he come in this lap? Will he come in at another point? I mean, this would pretty much half the race now. You can't exactly half it. But he's staying out.
It's about as near as you're going to get it on a Nordschleife race, isn't it?
This or the next lap, you basically have to decide. But, I mean, with coming in on lap 1, maybe it makes sense to extend the first one since you had the tires cooled down one time.
That's true. I'd expect, looking at fuel load, I expect Maximilian Dean to come in next lap. I think he'd be pushing to get 2 laps worth out of the fuel he's got left.
Well, just let's wait and see if anybody decides to come in this lap, even though the possibility is very small. Maybe Timothy Fritsch will go for the undercut. But he is not going to. Was worth a prediction.
It's always worth throwing it out there, just as coming up to the pit line.
Well, we've talked about the next stage of the Founders League, which will be the Nordschleife League. Of course, I also have some visual content for you. which we will show you in a second. But yeah, the thing we want to achieve with it is not only to basically detach the Nordschleife a bit more from the Founders Pack in itself, now with early access and not the open beta anymore, but also to be a bit more creative with the schedule in itself. Usually we had like a mix of cars and then a longer GT3 race. The RENNSPORT Nordschleife League will be a bit different that way. We will have more GT3, but on the other side you will have more special races in between, let's say, with the car classes. And the GT3 races won't be the same every time. They will vary in length and basically build up to a final race. That's how it's planned. It's of course not finalized yet, but a lot of it is already scheduled out. And I'm looking forward to it purely to the reason that it should be more competitive than the Founders League in itself was. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think we've had some good races in the Founders League, and it's been a great series to see people trying the Nordschleife in the other cars, and it's definitely something we want to continue doing, but I think the rebranding is a good move.
And how this rebranding does look like, we will show you right now. And there we are back with live footage. And Maximilian Dehn in the lead of the race. And Timothy Fridge, again, 1 second closer to Dominic Ladler.
Yeah, he does seem to close up around about this section of the circuit every lap. He's obviously, his Porsche is a bit nimbler through those corners than the BMW in front of him. It seems to close the gap up, and then it kind of opens up a little bit more again.
Oh, triple wide. Can he catch the car? Oh, not quite, but he didn't lose too much time. And, well, I won't quite spoil what comes exactly in the RENNSPORT Nordschleife League, but we can drive the M2 CS on Nordschleife next week. Of course, it was voted by the community to have the M2 on the Nordschleife. So that's your first chance, I guess, to drive it on the Nordschleife, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think it's the first race we've held in it, isn't it? Will it be the first? No, it won't be the first M2 CS race, but it definitely will be on the Nordschleife.
This time to
so excited about it that he decided to do a little spin in celebration.
Wonder if he may have overpushed the car trying to chase down Dominic Ladler the last 4 laps. I mean, the Porsche does burn the rear tires a lot more than the front tires, for obvious reasons. But the gap between Joachim Thunder and Dominik Ladler has also come down ever so slightly. The last 2 laps, down to about 9.5 seconds.
Maximilian Dean just hitting the Dottinger Hohe. I imagine he's going to pit this lap. His Porsche brethren Eric Hausler might also be pitting this lap. We'll wait and see.
Even though he has come in 2 laps later than Maximilian Dehn.
Yeah.
And into the pits he comes. Even if Häusler stays out, he might, unless he changes tires, then it will be quite tight, but he should come out quite close to him.
See the car going up under the jacks? You can't refuel and do tires at the same time in RENNSPORT, so it's one then the other.
Well, depending on the series, as Eric Häusler's also coming in, you also can't do it in real life, actually.
No, that's true.
Especially in endurance series, which have quick refill fuel pumps. As Maximilian Dehn is changing tires, actually. But, yeah,
Eric Häusler would have seen that just at the end as he came in for his pit stop.
Question is just, is he also changing tires? I would suspect so. I think it's not worth the risk at this moment.
He is, yes. He is changing tires. The next driver on track is Joachim Thunder, who, I don't know if he'll pit or not. He does look like he's decided.
Eric Häusler just moving again. And Thunder's also coming in.
A little bit off his box position.
Ladler staying out. I think this might bring down the gap between Ladler and Thunder quite significantly in the bigger picture.
Yeah, obviously Ladler is not running as little fuel as Thunder was at that time.
But he will be now.
He will be now, yeah.
So we still have Bräuniger, Ladler and Fritsch to come into the pit lane. Slunio also came in.
Poor Julian Sicko, way back, only just gone through the carousel. He's having a bit of a lonely race, but he's soldiering on.
And I mean, that's something we really should highlight. I mean, he was beached on the curb in Klostertal for a solid 1.5 minutes. Made his way out of it, changed tires, and has been struggling a bit, but still fighting. Kept on fighting with this car. And I mean, currently 8th, of course. You might think, okay, just 8th, but making it to the finish in a 2-hour race is something that not all too many people have done in RENNSPORT so far. Since, of course, we didn't have that many races this distance, but still.
Am I misremembering, or has the gap between Dean and Bräuninger come down quite a lot since the pit stops?
Bräuninger hasn't pitted yet.
That's true. That would be why. Yeah, guys, it was Hosler who was in second, wasn't it? Not Bräuninger. Yeah, Bräuninger, Ladler, Fricht haven't pitted.
Just listening to the sound of that BMW for a bit.
Just so, because we were talking about it earlier, Timothy Frisch did not serve his time penalty in his pit. He hasn't pitted yet.
Doesn't pit.
So
Yeah.
he hasn't pitted yet, so he definitely hasn't served his time penalty. He hasn't mysteriously served it randomly. Oh, Enrico Bräuninger.
Oh,
No.
in Mutko. Hast du einen a bit too hot?
That was a lucky one that damage wasn't turned on, because that would have been messy.
That would have been probably a toe-tailed car.
Don't make those kind of moves in the Nürburgring series, please.
Or if you do so, try to keep it out of the barriers by just spinning forwards.
That would have been the holy combination of front and back aero damage, which is... It very rarely balances out. It does tend to just lead to a terrible driving car.
I mean, with the impact he had, which was enormous, I think he might have lost a wheel, yeah? Which is actually possible. If
Yeah,
you want to
for
try
sure.
it out, go to single player, enable damage in the session settings, and play around with it.
Smash into a wall at high speed and watch a wheel bouncing down the track.
Pretty much.
Of course, Bräuninger yet to pit, so that's definitely going to make sure that Hausler overtakes him when he does decide to go in. He was probably pushing to try and see if he could close the gap a bit between Häusler before he decided to pit, which not helped much by his little pirouette. Gap between Timothy Frisch, who has pitted yet. Currently 46 seconds. Now, I'm imagining Timothy Fritsch is going to want to change tyres. So his pit stop is going to be minimum of about 30 seconds standing still. So
I'm a bit...
I can't see him getting out before Thunder.
Yeah, I'm a bit confused by Thunder as well, though. If the gap was 120 since he stopped, or 46, 45 to Timothy Fritsch, or if it was actually less.
Thunder and Ladler were quite close before the pit stops. Thunder's got an extra 15 seconds up the road from Timothy Fritsch, so that could be pretty close.
It was also fairly close for Breuninger for another Code Brown moment. But of course, into the pits he comes. Yeah, 60 seconds a gap. It is quite a stretch, isn't it?
Yeah.
Let's wait and see.
Breuninger is not taking tyres. He's decided to just fuel and go for the last 43 minutes of the race. And as he's pulling it out of the pits, I think Dominic Ladler is just coming in.
Pretty much exactly the case. Joachim Thunder now on the Döttinger Höhe.
Dominic Ladler not taking tyres either, so he's just having a quick... Well, I say quick, he's completely filled his tank up, but no tyres.
That will promote him to 4th place, though, so...
Yeah, for sure.
Because Joachim Thunder's just now in Hohenrhein. But
Timothy Frisch is serving his penalty. Gaps are a lot more even now than they were. I know some people hadn't pitted before, obviously, but the gaps are fairly an even spread throughout the field.
Yeah, there's always...
If you ignore Maximilian Dean.
I mean, even the gap between Dean and Häusler isn't too far off that.
No, true.
So it's... Can actually really see it on a track map, how spread out or how evened out they are. But that's the running order at the moment. Dean, Häusler, Breuninger, Ladler, Thunder, Fritsch, Lunio, Chico. Kurz and Kolberg unfortunately not able to start the race. Ali Zaya not able to finish the race. We still don't know quite why he didn't surface drive the penalty, but...
Yeah, nothing on any of the Discord channels about it yet, so no news about that, I'm afraid. Joachim Thunder and Dominic Ladler's best lap times so far are within a tenth. So the pace, at least on a best lap sense, is very, very close together. I can't really compare the last laps because Joachim Thunder came into the pits. time in game is currently 6:15. You can see the shadows are getting a bit longer. It's starting to get a bit darker, especially in the more kind of heavily wooded sections of the track, and Maximilian Dean's lights are starting to become visible. So it is getting darker, and we will see it get a little bit darker still in the next 40 minutes.
You know, one detail that I really like, that I don't know if you really notice it, but for me, I always kind of noticed it. If you look at the tarmac and where more rubber is laid down compared to where less rubber is laid down, if we go and watch with Eric Häusler on board, perhaps, you can see that the rubber is actually reflecting more light than the actual tarmac.
Yeah, the rubbered line is definitely more reflective than the lines around it because of all the rubber, obviously. But yeah, it's one of those little details that gets added into games that you don't notice it until you think about it necessarily. But it's just another kind of like tick box of realism that gets thrown in there.
Oh, Kessel, and now this is dangerous. If he just tries to push forward, he might end up like Julien Checot. Reverses out of the carousel, so kind of saves it, lost him a lot of time, but the first mistake from Eric Häusler we've seen today, I'd say.
Yeah, probably this about his first mistake he's made. He's been doing a pretty flawless race so far.
But,
just getting outpaced by Maximilian Dean.
But it could have been a race-ending mistake, or at least a race-crushing mistake. Because if you get beached pretty much within the banking and on the inside curb of the carousel, you are done for. Unless somebody pushes you around, you can't get out of it because your rear axle is just floating in the air. Which on a rear-wheel drive car isn't necessarily helpful. I mean, technically, there's the Coriolis force, which could help you propel you forward a bit, but on a 1.4 ton vehicle, it's not gonna help you necessarily.
The gap between Thunder and Dominic Ladler has come down by about a second during this lap, so Thunder does seem to have the pace advantage over Dominic Ladler right now.
Maybe the new tires will pay off later on, and we still have 37 minutes to go. Should be about 4 more laps, 4.5 for Thunder.
One thing we've not really talked about much so far has been Dominic Ladler with specifically referring to his championship title standings. I can't remember who was second.
Good that you mention it, because second is Pascal John, who unfortunately isn't here today, but Dominic Ladler leading this championship and pretty much guaranteed to take the championship with his 4th place right now. But Joachim Thunder in second, he's of course currently in 5th. Julien Checot currently in 8th. But Eric Häusler, he's in second. He could jump Thunder and Checot depending on the points payout of the race, of course, but also depending on where Thunder now finishes, if he gets past Ladler or not. You still have Fridge in the hunt for some positions. And of course, Maximilian Dehm. I mean, a victory will give him quite a decent amount of points. Reiniger as well in 3rd might climb the ladder quite a lot.
I'm trying to remember way back when we started the RFL. Was it Maximilian Dean that won the first round?
Yes, it was. It was the GT3 race with Tim Schroeder having the hunt, but Maximilian Dehm just being too quick to catch in that race, and it's not much different here today.
He's trying to bookend the lifespan of the RFL with wins. But it's been great to have him turning up to the events and see him racing. He's been a joy to watch, even if he does tend to win by quite a large amount.
You could see it like that, but on the other hand, it's cool to see so different sets of skills being used. I mean, we used to say the same about Dominik Ladler. Then we
That's
had
very true.
the spell of Dennis Hines dominating the RENNSPORT Community League, just for Dominik Ladler to take it in the end, but it does show that very different drivers can achieve very different things, but all get to success in the end. And I mean, with the RFL, or then RNL being, of course, the Nordschleife League, basically, it does breed a very different kind of racecraft compared to, for example, RCL, which focuses on the racetracks around the world with the GT3 cars. And I mean, in the RCEs, we see different names on top every week, or every second week, basically.
Yeah, there's been some really exciting racing going on in the RCE races, and it's very kind of unpredictable in what's going to happen. Obviously, with the RFL being Nordschleife races, people who know the Nordschleife tend to do better. So you could say it's a bit more predictable in that sense, but by swapping up the different car classes that we've been using, it's led to some fairly interesting results with drivers gelling with one car class more than other over this specific track, at least. And yeah, it's been a fun series to watch, and I've really enjoyed watching it and casting it.
Can only say the same, but the unique thing about the Nordschleife, of course, is that it's pretty much the only track that has a dedicated or multiple dedicated racing series just to itself. I mean, on any other track, the racetracks are part of calendars. They are one part in the championship, but they are not the complete championship. But the Nordschleife is. And so you will naturally have people focused only on this track.
Timothy Frisch just clearing his 5-second penalty, and now he's got a 10-second penalty for exceeding the second incident point limit. With Adrian Luneur being 11 seconds behind him right now, that
could be close.
Probably unknown to Luneur, it puts him in striking distance.
He's been oddly struggling so far, but there's still half an hour left to go in this race. And
yeah, it's being an odd one for that. You kind of think it's 3/4 finished, but it's still half an hour of racing. And half an hour is half an hour, whichever way you look at it. So there's still a lot that can happen in those 30 minutes.
Pretty much have two positions left to decide. Dominik Ladler and Thunder for 4th, and Fridge and Lunio for 6th. But we can't count out any out-of-the-order mistake from any driver. As we see into R now, it's very dark with the shadows.
It's a strange track at this time of night, really, is the Nordschleife as well, isn't it? With the big tunnel sections of trees being kind of significantly darker than kind of some of the other sections of the track. So you have this kind of bizarre section kind of around about now in this time of day where it's kind of like half dark race, half light race.
Yeah, it's sometimes quite hard to adapt to if you're not used to it, because you have the change in condition not only per lap, but also, of course, per track segment. So you kind of have to get used to different light levels, which depending on your hardware, of course, as well, but depending on what you are used to, is harder for some people than others. I mean, now you get into the very dark section from Breitscheid into Kesselchen. I think in the real 24 hours of the Nordschleife, most people would tell you that the early morning hours are the most challenging because, especially on the dirting, you drive towards the sun. So you have basically, since the sun is so low, no shade from the roof of your car and the sun just getting into your eyes and blinding you partially.
Especially with kind of morning fog, if it's being a bit of a moist period, that obviously gets kind of like lit up by the sun like a blanket and obscures you even more. Enrico Bräuninger had a bit of a moment a little bit ago, and unfortunately that put him over the first incident point limit, so he now has a 5-second penalty to serve.
You should be fine with the gap here, so Dominic Lala, I suppose, but...
Yeah, it's not necessarily a game changer, but just mentioning.
Meanwhile,
Adrian Luna currently 8 seconds behind Timothy Fritsch, so he's, unknown to him, he's within overtaking range.
and what is on the result sheet in the end is what matters. As somebody's asking in chat what he's actually watching right now, this is the Nordschleife 2-hour race, the final race of the RENNSPORT Founders League. Well, not only Season 3, but also the Founders League as a whole, because it will be rebranded into the RENNSPORT Nordschleife League. And we still have 28 minutes of racing left. And we are suspecting Joachim Thunder to close in on Dominic Ladler, even though the gap is still at 15 seconds. And Adrian Lunio might actually get close on track to Timothy Fritsch, by the way it looks right now.
Yeah, Luna seems to really have the pace on Timothy Fritsch right now. He's closing kind of hand over fist at the minute. It was 7 seconds last time I mentioned it. It's now less than 4 seconds. And he's getting glimpses of Timothy Fritsch down the track.
I feel like Lunio has really found the way how to drive the AMG. He's pushing it much more aggressively through the technical sections from Wilpermann here to now Sprunghügel.
Yeah, he seems very comfortable with it as well.
And also with the rate he's catching Timothy Fritsch at.
Yeah, it's always a good confidence booster.
Oh, and Timothy Fritsch is actually off.
Yeah. Spinning off just before the Petit Carousel there, letting Adrian Luna through.
I've never heard somebody say Petit Carousel. I mean, I know
Have
what
you
this
not?
meant. No.
I've always heard it called the Petit Carousel.
I don't watch the English broadcast, so the Nordschleife have
Fair
got
enough.
it. I mean, usually I always watch English broadcasts in motorsports, but on the Nordschleife, the German commentators, they are some of the best in motorsports history.
Of course.
So I really enjoy it.
Adrian Luna there, having a massive moment on the Dottinger Hoa. I'm not really sure what went on there, but he almost took the prize for the most pirouettes in one crash. But that has let Timothy Fritsch past him again.
So still driving very slowly.
Yeah, it's probably just not really quite sure where to brake now. because he's not going all of the miles an hour.
Well, he's now outside of the 10 seconds he need to Timothy Fridge, but only 1.5 seconds out of that range, I guess.
Yeah. It's probably worth mentioning that Nuno's fastest lap is 10 seconds faster than Timothy Frisch's. So, not surprising that he was catching him quite as fast as he was before, but that's bound to have knocked his confidence a little bit in the AMG, which he seemed to have quite a lot of, but maybe prudence and hindsight has showed it was maybe a bit too much confidence.
I'm sure you will tell us in the Discord afterwards what went on. But the gap between Joachim Thunder and Dominic Lalla isn't really changing.
No, at least not at a pace that's enough. The last lap for both of them, there was only 4 tenths in it, so that's pretty much the same as far as Nordschleife laps is concerned. Maximilian Dean doing his fastest lap of the race last lap as an 8:06.9, which is fairly rapid.
And Adrian Lunio's back within the 10 seconds of Timothy Fridge.
Didn't take him too long. It's not knocked his confidence too much then.
But I'm not sure if the struggles that Adrian Lunio had, if he isn't close to at least the second incident barrier as well.
Yeah, unfortunately, I can't see how many incident points people have accumulated. I can just see when they get them. And I'm not counting the incident points for every driver in the race.
Come on.
Sorry. I do apologise.
Does look good with the sunset though.
It does look good. You can see how much darker it is, like here though, for Region Renault compared to when you're out in the sunshine. It's far more muted, and your headlights really start to kind of like take effect. It's 8 o'clock in game time right now, 8 p.m. The sun is pretty low, so I would expect it to start getting increasingly darker, increasingly quickly.
I think if we get to this point of the lap next time around, it will already be quite dark. Maybe with a bit of luck you still see half a meter of sun.
Yeah, if you can swap to Maximilian Dean, I was just going to Dottinger Hill where it's bright sunshine, but in the section before then, you can really see his headlights on the road. So he's obviously in a lot darker kind of territory further along the track.
This part of the track is particularly beautiful at about 8 to 8:30 p.m. because the sun is going down pretty much behind the Nürburg. So it's illuminated so nicely and you can see it from the track. So if you should find yourself on a Nordschleife race without somebody in your rearview mirror or ahead of you, at about 8 p.m. on the Nordschleife, take a look to your right to the Nürburg. It looks beautiful. Oh, Ludio. Way too fast into mood curve. That would have been nasty with damage, huh? We keep repeating that sentence, of course, but the thing you have to consider is they can do this now. It isn't faster than driving the corner normally. It will lose you time, but it won't punish you as much. But from the next race on this track in an official broadcast race, it will, and it will hurt. So
yeah, we might see lap times dropping a little bit as drivers try to be a bit more careful, stay out of the barriers, especially on longer races. Yeah, I think it'll make an interesting dynamic change to the race.
I mean, most people really drive with a different mentality as well when this scenario comes on, because it's not anymore, okay, I need to keep my pace up for the duration of the race, or I want to get this and this and this driver. It's changing completely to just keep it out of the barriers, take the result you can get.
Yeah, and overtaking maneuvers become a lot riskier when you can break your car doing it and someone else's.
It's unfortunate if you couldn't join today, but of course there will be more races. Tomorrow at 8 PM will be an RCE, our Christmas special, which was voted by the community. Will be Fuji with hypercars and GT3s for a 90-minute race. Should be lots of fun. And the Nordschleife League will not take part immediately in 2 weeks. It will have a short break, but of course next week we are back with the RCL for round 3. So there's still plenty of racing action left to do this year, and even more to come next year. So if you want any news on what races are happening at what times, can take a look in Discord under Community Sporting and follow the channels Founders League, Community League, and Community Events. Those are our official events from RENNSPORT for you to join. Pretty much every Friday. But Lunio has closed the gap to 2 seconds to Fridge and enters Tiergarten way too fast and loses that advantage as quickly as he gained it. But now with Maximilian, it's exactly what we said. It's much darker now. Barely any light coming through the trees with the sun being this low. And Maximilian Dehn keeping the pace up high. But Eric Häusler... Yeah.
Carry on.
Eric Häusler also really seems to have recovered from the one mistake he did in Carousel. And
yeah, he's got plenty of space around him, bless him. But yeah, he seems to have got his pace back fairly quickly. He's done a 1:14.4, which you can't complain about at this stage in the race. That's for sure. I was just looking at the Thunder Ladler race a bit further down the field. Thunder is currently 13 seconds behind Dominic Ladler, and his last lap was 1.3 seconds quicker than Dominic Ladler. Now, we haven't got 13 laps of this race left, but is that maybe an indication of how the different drivers are handling tyre wear?
But I think, if I'm not mistaken, Joachim Thunder changed tyres. Dominic Lala
Yes.
definitely didn't change tires, so maybe he's just approaching. The tires don't really have a cliff, but they do drop off faster at some stage, and maybe Dominic Lala has just reached that stage. But it seems like Joachim Thunder can't quite push his Audi to the maximum anymore either.
No, the gap has, again, he's still wavering quite a lot between one section and another. But at times it's been below 13 seconds, and at other times it seems to be above 14 seconds. So it very much seems to depend what point of the track you're talking about.
You will definitely have an eye on it. But Alizaya, meanwhile, he DSQ'd from this race. We are not quite sure why. So he did receive a drive-through penalty for exceeding his pit speed limit and didn't serve it in time. We are not sure if he didn't notice or if it was some other issue he had, but fortunately that meant he was gone from the race in a fairly good position. I think P6 was it at the time.
Yeah, I think he was. Yeah, I think he was P6 at the time.
Looking at the time remaining and the position of Maximilian Dehn, we will have 2 more laps after this one.
Yeah, because he's coming down Dottingham right now, isn't he? So he's probably going to be finished around about the 12-minute mark, which means he'll get another 2 laps in, yeah.
Don't be confused by the 7 minutes. Besides Maximilian Dehn's name, it's actually 107 minutes. Adrian Lunio within 1.5 seconds of Timothy Fridge.
Maximilian Dehn seems to be coming into the pits.
Is he going for fastest lap?
I mean, he already has the fastest lap, but maybe he's going for an even faster fastest lap.
Well, he will have the outlap now. He will get the tires into shape and then probably just fire it out in the last one.
You think he's going for the fastest lap on record during the race?
I think yes. I think so. Because if you didn't know, the time trial leaderboards aren't actually the fastest lap times you will see in the game, because the time trial laps are driven with 40 liters of fuel, so standard fuel. And the race, of course, right now is looking with Maximilian Dehn having approximately 20 liters left, as Timothy Fridge is alongside the track, trying to let Adrian Lunio pass, who is not going by. Adrian Lunio wants to have a race, and Timothy Fridge doesn't want to, I feel like. But, well, yeah. Because you have lower fuel loads and sometimes even tires in a better shape throughout the lap, the official lap record is usually driven in a race and not on the time trial leaderboards. And indeed, everyone can join this race. Sometimes there are limitations on races, which is fairly rare, but pretty much everything that you see on this channel is open for anyone to join. And as Tim already pointed out in chat, that you can find the current online racing schedule in the Discord. under contests. And we also announce the events that take place in the community sporting tab. When you take a look there to RENNSPORT Community League, RENNSPORT Community Events, or RENNSPORT Founders League, or which will be rebranded to RENNSPORT Nordschleife League. You can find all the info you need there.
And I think they announce them on our social media feeds as well, don't they?
Yeah, indeed. On social media every Monday we have a schedule post online with all the community events, so there are much more special races per week. Community events like Aero, TRL, SHR. So lots of races to choose from. Pretty much you have a race every day. You could drive a longer one. In addition to the regular schedule. Adrian Lunio, though, in a good slipstreaming position. It might be a bit tight, but I think he should get close enough to the Porsche of Timothy Fritsch. I think he backed out of it.
I think he did back out of it, yeah. I think he decided it wasn't worth trying. Maybe going to hold off for T1 coming into the stadium section.
The drivers now really having to depend on their lights on the car. Now the gap between Thunder and Lala has come down another 3 seconds. 11 seconds left. It would be about 5 seconds per lap.
Yeah. Yeah, Thunder's last lap time was nearly 4 seconds faster than Dominic Ladler's. So he's on the cusp of that.
Lala himself has closed down the gap to Bräuninger a bit, but I don't think we will see much change in between those two cars.
No, the last lap times, there was 7 seconds between Bräuninger and Ladler. Sorry, Ladler's last lap was 7 seconds faster than Bräuninger's. I don't know if he had an incident or not, or if that's purely on pace. But it's definitely a huge chunk of a gap.
Oh, Lunio, quite wide there, exiting Bielstein. Into the gravel. That will be another incident point to his name.
I'm not sure what happened there, but the gap between Ladler and Bräuninger just took a nosedive.
Good question.
The gap back to Thunder is about the same, so presumably Bräuninger had an oops moment. But yeah, that's put Dominic Ladler within 4 seconds of Enrico Bräuninger right now. And with Joachim Thunder being 11 seconds further down the track, it could make for a pretty interesting last lap.
Yeah, it could get quite a lot more tight than we would have thought. Meanwhile, average lap times are fluctuating quite a lot, but you can say about 8:20 for most drivers. Of course, Maximilian Dehn and Häusler are quite a bit above that, but the rest is around that segment. In terms of best lap, you have an 8:07 by Maximilian Dehn, 8:12 by Häusler, 8:18 by Bräuninger, 8:10 by Lunio. The rest being in the low 8:20s. Oh, and Lala into the wall.
It's not something you see every day.
Not really. Maybe drivers getting catched out by the darkness now.
And that has given Dominic Ladler a 5-second penalty.
Oh,
You may know that way ago when I mentioned that Enrico Bräuninger had a 5-second penalty, and you cockily said that won't make any difference.
well,
It may
made
well
us
make a
not.
difference now.
But I think Bräuninger has served this one in the pit stop, didn't he?
He didn't know he got it after his pit stop. So he still has 5 seconds to serve, so does Dominic Ladler. Joachim Thunder is, as of yet, clean in the penalty stakes. So if, and it's a fairly big if, but if these three manage to come together at the end of the race, you might see a cheeky Joachim Thunder third place due to penalties.
It would well be very interesting.
Thunder currently in single digits behind Ladler now. Ladler now 5 seconds behind Enrico Bräuninger. The gap between them is coming down leaps and bounds at the minute.
Maximilian Dehn heating up the tires on the Döttinger Höhe. You don't see that usually in a race. He's definitely going for the fastest lap. So he definitely takes the shot for glory here. We'll keep an eye on the timings from Bräuninger, Ladler and Thunder, but for now I didn't immediately into the water. But let's watch this lap by Maximilian Dehn, because I'm thinking we will witness something quite spectacular here.
He did get a purple sector on his last lap, so he's obviously winding up for something.
It's qualifying all over again.
Eric Heusler, meanwhile, we haven't talked about him so much for a while, but he did his fastest lap of the race last lap. So some of these guys still really pushing and managing to get maximum out of their tyres, even 2 hours into a race.
Maximilian Dehn with fresh tires.
Does a purple sector 1.
Look at the Ferris wheel. You know, I'm not a fan of Ferris wheels. I don't really enjoy being on them, but I think this one I would go on.
I bet you get quite a good view of the racetrack from way up there.
Yeah.
Obviously not all of it, because it's massive, but...
You know, being
Maximilian
at the
Just going to say,
Nordschleife.
Maximilian Dehn, purple sector 2.
Now will be the most interesting part. Going all over the curbs into Hatzenbach now. He has the car, he has the skills, he has the tires, and has low fuel levels, the ideal surroundings for, well, a lap record, you would say.
It's 10 p.m. currently in game, and not that I'm saying we model this, but I'm pretty sure it's roundabout here where they get the fastest laps on the Nordschleife, isn't it? Because of the cold air and the improved combustion.
Very much so, even though I can guarantee you that this won't really benefit Maximilian Dehn in this case.
For those interested in the Bräuninger Ladler Thunder fight, there is currently 5 seconds between Bräuninger and Ladler, and then another 5 seconds between Ladler and Thunder.
And with Thunder being the only one without a penalty, this could be tight.
Yep.
So just looking it up, the fastest lap currently on record is an 8:00.146 by Christopher Högfeld. Kaiki Oliveira with an 8:01.9, Nico Nüninghoff an 8:02.9, and then it's Maximilian Dehn 8:04.2. Can he improve on that lap record?
Currently on 4 purple sectors. Feeling a bit like the Count from Sesame Street. And Joachim Thunder 4 seconds behind Dominic Ladler, so seconds ahead.
And it's points he can need for second in the championship.
Yeah, for sure.
Incredibly aggressive.
Just sitting outside the 5 second range, though, just can't seem to squeak inside it.
Still has quite a lot of time to do so. To close in on Enrico Bräuninger. But this could still be a podium for Joachim Thunder. Meanwhile, Adrian Lunio is parked in the pit lane.
Oh. And not in a pit box. He has 10-second penalty to serve, apparently, but that is not where you serve penalties. Maximilian Dehn continuing his purple sector streak. Now, at the minute, according to the HUD, his ideal time is an 8:04. Got 3 sectors to go right now.
But those are the most technical. Just riding the curb there.
Joachim Thunder very much on the back bumper of Dominic Ladler now. But as we've mentioned many times before, being behind Dominic Ladler and getting past Dominic Ladler are 2 very different things.
I mean, Thunder would need to push Dominic Ladler towards Enrico Bräuninger, basically. That would be ideal for him. But I mean, you can't see as much as at night because it's dark, of course, but you can still see how incredible this lap is from Maximilian Dehn.
Yeah, he's still using pretty much the entire track, every corner. He's obviously relying a bit on his muscle memory of Nordschleife, because the visibility is not that good.
And onto the Döttinger Höhe, just needs to get a tight exit. And that looked good. We will get back to him as soon as he crosses the Döttinger, because right now we need to watch this. Joachim Thunder and Dominic Now the jittering, that is purely because of the replay server. This is not actually what the competitors see. And we see a flash of light from Joachim Thunder towards Dominik Ladler. It's the ghost of Tim Schroeder here at the Nordschleife. But still 5
Just
seconds.
as a Maximilian Dean teaser, his ideal lap is now an 8:02.
Out of the final turn, what will it be? Across the line, it's victory for Maximilian Dehn. And is it a new personal best or a new record? Tim will let us know.
My replay's a little bit behind. It's an 8:02.5 for Maximilian Dean on his last lap, which is not a record, but that does beat his personal best.
It is a big improvement. And I can tell you where that is in just a second. It is third on the leaderboard, in front of Nico Nüninghoff.
Adrian Luneur has just pulled into the pits, but has also finished because he crossed the line after Maximilian Dean.
Finish is a finish in my books.
Now, Enrico Breuninger is less than 5 seconds ahead of Dominik Ladler, who is half a second ahead of Joachim Thunder. So he might have a rude awakening when it comes to the leaderboard at the end of this.
I mean, as it stands, Joachim Thunder would pass both of them, doesn't he?
Yep, he sure does. And Breuninger and Ladler will essentially be in the same relative positions because they've both got a 5-second penalty.
It's a fight for the podium.
Unfortunately, Joachim Thunder probably doesn't know it.
Makes it even more exciting for us, doesn't it? But the gap has grown a bit again to 4 seconds.
And the last thing Joachim Thunder needs is for him and Dominik Ladler to start fighting and get them outside of that 5-second range from Enrico Breuninger.
Right now he's outside of 5 seconds. It's super close.
He is very, very close right now. According to the interval, he's bang on 5 seconds.
How good is the exit? It's 2.23 and it's 0.251 for Thunder. So that means he will pass Dominik Ladler for 4th, of course. But he misses out on P3 by 21 thousandths of a second.
Oh.
Timothy Fritsch will come home in 6th. And Julian Chico, we haven't mentioned him in quite a while, I feel like. But he is still driving and he will also finish this race.
Which is a feat in itself.
I mean, he wasn't off the pace or anything. It was just that unlucky mistake on lap 1 that really threw him down a rabbit hole throughout the race. I mean, being stuck on that curb for 1.5 or 2 minutes straight, it's just painful.
It is, yes. It was painful to watch. I'm sure it was even worse for him in the driving seat.
Timothy Bridge across the line. So how could the time be wasted if it's a new personal best on the Nordschleife?
Because he wanted the record, didn't he? You've not had much pressure this race, Julian Sacco, but just know that everybody's watching you now. He knows he's the last one on track. He knows the cast's going to be watching him.
I mean, we had a certain Frenchman doing wild stuff when this was the case. Oh, and Checo into the barriers. Not quite what he hoped for, I think, but nice 360 while already doing so. But I think we will see him back in a strong form next time in the RENNSPORT Community League.
Yeah, for sure. He's like you said, he was very unlucky with this one, and I'm sure he'll be back in fighting form for the next race.
And I mean, at Daytona, that is always interesting to watch.
It's always a fun race. Under the Audi bridge in his Audi. Confirmation as everyone's finished the race. Joachim Thunder in 4th place by 21 hundredths of a second.
Oh, and one final lawn mowing trip. But across the line, Julian Checo. Hats off to him for continuing and sticking to it.
For sure. And he'll get well rewarded with points for doing that.
Indeed.
Thank you.
Well, that was a wrap for Season 3 and the RFL as a whole. We are waiting for the points update, but I'm pretty sure we already know who we crown our Season 3 champion.
The only one missing from his trophy cabinet here at RENNSPORT.
So if we go to the app, into leagues, and into the Founders League, we see that Dominik Ladler has received another 75 points. I think the results will take some time to properly update. But it's safe to say that Maximilian Dehn getting 126 points from this race. I think it is safe to say that Dominik Ladler wins Season 3. So you have 3 champions out of 3 seasons. I guess that's at least more balanced than the RENNSPORT Community Leagues. And I'd say we say goodbye until tomorrow evening, when we will have the Christmas special at Fuji. And do you have any final words to say you want to let us know.
No, it was a good race, and thank you, RFL, for all the races you've given us. You will be missed. Kinda.
With these words, we see the Nordschleife back in 2025 with the RENNSPORT Nordschleife League. And until then, enjoy the other races we have. Have a great time and goodbye.
Goodbye.